Good morning, Algebra 2. We are covering Lesson 77, Law of Cosines. Now in Lesson, I believe 71, we covered Law of Sines. So this is a different method of solving for angles and sides using the cosine trig function. So the Law of Sines can be used when we have side, angle, side, or when we have all three sides. So side, angle, side means that they're all like next to each other. The angle is included. That's review from geometry. Or we have all three sides. We are going to use a law of cosines to find unknown sides and angles. The book will say, like, solve this triangle. And I put a little note. When it says solve this triangle, it means they want you to find any missing angle and any missing side. Okay, so if they say that, that is what they're asking. So here's our law of cosines. So it is kind of long. You'll recognize part of it. So a squared equals b squared plus c squared. Hopefully that looks a little familiar. It's not exactly identical to the Pythagorean theorem, but it has the same letters. Then you're going to subtract the product of 2 times b times c times cosine a. So a little reminder. Lowercase letters represent your sides, uppercase represent your angles, and your side and corresponding sides and angles should be across from each other. So notice side A is across from angle A. So they should be across from each other, and then the other sides should be surrounding it. So we're going to do an example together before we do our lesson practice. That way you have plenty. So, well, actually, this section is pretty long, so maybe I'll just do one additional example. So I'm going to have us solve triangle RST. Okay, so I'm going to draw that triangle, and it's not going to be perfectly to scale, so I'm just doing a rough drawing. So angle R, angle S, angle T. This side here is lowercase s. This angle here is 75 degrees. This is 13. This is 17. So when they say solve, they are wanting us to find this unknown side, right? We know these two sides, and these two unknown angles. So when we're done, we're going to know what side S is, we're going to know what angle R is, and we're going to know what angle T is. Those are the three missing pieces. So I can find my side using my law of cosines. So notice I'm going to be using these two pieces of information, S and the only angle I've been given. And so this is how I would set it up, right? It says the side, so S squared equals the other two sides squared, 13 squared plus 17 squared minus 2 times my sides times 13 times 17. And it doesn't matter what order you put these in. Sorry, I think I'm using a pen that is practically out of ink. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. And then times the cosine of the angle that's across from it. So 75 degrees. So it's a lot to enter. You could probably enter all of it at once, but I like to break it up a little bit. So S squared equals, I'm going to do the first part, 13 squared plus 17 squared, and I get 458 minus 2 times 13 times, so now I'm entering this part, times 17 times the cosine of 75. And I get 114.398. So I'm going to simplify that side. 458 minus 114.398. And I get 343.602. And then to solve, I would take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of the answer I just got, and I have that side S is 18.5. So I'm going to put that here. And then now I am left with, I know what S is. Now I need to find my angles. So now I know what side S is. You can either continue doing the law of cosines, or you can use the law of sines, if you'd like, to find the missing sides. To find the missing angles. So that is how I'm going to set this up now that I have a pair of angles. So we just found that 18.5, right, over sine of 75 degrees will equal, let's say, 17, right, over the sine of angle R. And I'll bring that up for us. Remember, we're going to cross multiply. So 17 times the sine of 75 degrees equals 18.5 times the sine of R, and we would divide by 18.5. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to enter 17 times the sine of 75. I'm going to divide by 18.5. And I got 0.88761 equals the sine of R. So we have to enter, right, sine inverse of that decimal, 0.88761, and that will give me angle R. So the sine inverse of 0.88761 and angle R equals 62.6. So I'm going to record that. 62.6 degrees. Make sure you differentiate. And then to find angle T, that's easy, right? I can take 180 degrees minus 75 minus 62.6, and that will equal angle T. So 180 minus 75 minus 62.6, and I get 42.4 degrees. And so I have just solved for that angle. So let's jump into our lesson practice, which is on page 549. And we'll do part A. So part A asks us to find C in the following. Again, this isn't drawn to scale. They told me this is C, this is 27 degrees. They want, here's 20 and here's 13. So they'd like me to find this side. So we would say C squared, the side squared, equals the other two sides squared, so 20 squared plus 13 squared, minus 2 times my sides, times the cosine of our angle. And you could enter it all at once if you'd like. So 20 squared plus 13 squared minus 2 times 20 times 13 times the cosine of 27. And I get 105.67. So C squared equals 105 and I'm going to round 0.68. And then to solve, we would take the square root. So the square root of the answer I just got, and I get that C is approximately 10.3. So you may enter all of that at once. Next one. They'd like us in this next example to solve triangle DEF. And so here is my triangle. They've told me that this angle here is 112 degrees. I have D, E, F. I don't know E, but I know that this is 35 and this is 80. So notice I have side, angle, side. And so that's why I'm able to do law of cosines. So let's mark down what we're going to be solving for. I'm going to solve for side E. I'm going to solve for angle D and angle F. Those are the three pieces that are missing. So here we go. E squared equals the other two sides squared. So 35 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times my, minus 2 times my side times the cosine of 112. So I'm going to enter all of that. 35 squared plus 80 squared, squared, minus 2 times 35 times 80 times the cosine of 112. And I get 9,700, and I'm going to record that. So E squared equals 9722.8. I'm going to take the square root. And I get that E is approximately 98.6. So I have solved for E. Now that I've solved for E, I'm going to use the law of sines because I now know what E is. So now I now have two pairs. So I'm going to start with the I'm going to start with F. So 98.6 over the sine of 112 degrees is proportional to 35 over the sine of F. And then from there, we would cross multiply. So 35 times the sine of 112 equals 98.6 times the sine of F. And we'd have to divide by 98.6 in order to get F all by itself. So I'm going to enter this 35 times the sine of 112. I'm going to hit enter, divided by 98.6, and I get 0.32912 equals the sine of F. So do the inverse. So sine inverse of 0.32912, and that will give you angle F. So sine inverse of the decimal I just received, and I got angle F equals approximately 19.2 degrees. Whoops, angle F, my bad. And to solve for angle D is easy. It's the last thing we're going to do. So 180 minus the 112 minus the 19.2, and that will give me the remaining angle. I don't need to do any crazy law of sines or law of cosines to find it. And I got 48.8 degrees. So we found all three missing pieces. So moving on, we are going to use the law of cosines to find a missing angle. So we don't have to solve for everything in this next piece. They'd like us to find the measure of angle C in the following triangle. This is A, B, C. This is 18, 30, and 14. So notice in this example, I do not have side, angle, side. I have side, side, side. And that was one of the ways, if we go back, you can use this when I have side, angle, side, or side, side, side. And I should have labeled it in this first. I have side, angle, side. And that's why that worked there. Same with the first lesson practice. So going back to this, they want us to find angle C. So I'm going to use this pair here. Right? So I start with our sides. 18 squared equals the other two sides squared. Doesn't matter whether you write the 30 first or the 14. Minus 2 times my sides times the cosine of C. I don't know what C is. So I'm going to solve everything. I'm going to simplify the pieces I do know. So 18 squared in our calculator is 324. You now need to simplify this part here. So 14 squared, and you have to do it separate from this because this is attached to cosine C, so you have to do it in this order. So 14 squared plus 30 squared, and I get 1096. Now I can simplify this part. So negative 2 times 14 times 30, I get negative 840 cosine C. So I'm going to subtract the 1096. So 324 minus 1096, I get negative 772 equals negative 840 times the cosine of C. Then I can divide. And so I get negative 772 divided by negative 840. I get 0.91905 equals the cosine of C. Remember, when we have a decimal and we don't know our angle, then we do cosine inverse of the decimal we got, and it will tell us our angle. So second inverse of the answer I received, angle C equals 23.2 degrees. All right, part D, which is very similar to how, is a word problem, so they're just telling us. So they said triangle FGH, F equals 9.2, G equals 5, and H equals 10.1, and they want us to find angle G. Now remember what I told you about lowercase and uppercase. So because these are lowercase, I know these are sides. Okay? And I know that I would use these because they should be across from each other. Okay, because they always pair, like lowercase f will be across from capital F and lowercase g will be across. And that's important in how I set this up. So we're going to set up 5 squared because they're opposite of each other. And then the other two sides squared, so 9.2 squared plus 10.1 squared minus 2 times the sides we just wrote down times the cosine of G. So this side over here should be opposite of this angle. And that's why it was important to identify that. So I'm going to enter the pieces we know. So simplify this part. 9.2 squared plus 10.1 squared. And I got 186.65. Now simplify this part. So negative 2 times 9.2 times 10.1. And I get negative 185.84 cosine G. So I'm going to subtract the negative 186. Uh, 25 minus 186.65 gives me negative 161.65 equals negative 185.84. I'm showing you all my Algebra 1 steps, right? Now I have to divide by the negative 185.84. And I get positive 0.869. I'm just going to leave that equals cosine G. So we're going to use cosine inverse of 0.869, probably 0.87 would be, and that'll give me angle G. So cosine inverse of 0.87, and I get that angle G is 29.5 degrees. All right, so moving on, and I'm going to do 2 examples for this one. I'm probably going to skip the last word problem. The last part of our notes is finding the area of a triangle using a new formula, and it's called Heron's, probably the name of the guy who created it, formula. And his formula was this: our area equals the square root of S times S minus A times S minus B times S minus C. And if you're wondering what S is half the sum of all 3 sides. So, this formula, remember, lowercase letters stand for sides. This formula is on page 548. But we're going to do an example and then we'll do your lesson practice. So here's an example. Find the area of the following triangle. I have like maybe 5 more minutes left. This side is 9, this side is 11, and this side is 18. So if I want to find this area of the triangle and I don't know my angles, I don't know the height, right? The only thing I can do is using this formula. So first I'm going to find S. S is half the sum of all 3 sides. So that would give me half of 38. Hold on, 9 plus 11 plus 18. Yeah, half of 38. So S equals 19. So I'm going to take this piece of information and I'm going to plug it into my formula. The area equals the square root of S times S minus, and then you can just pick, let's say I make this A, this B, this C. So 19 minus A times S minus B times S minus C. You just take the S value and subtract all 3 sides. So I'm going to enter all of this except for the square root symbol. So 19 times 19 minus 9 times 19 minus 11 times 19 minus 18. And I get 1520. And then the square root of 1520, the area equals 38.99, or you could round that, right, to 39. So, using that formula, we're going to do part E of our lesson practice. Find the area of this crazy triangle they gave us. They said this is 4 inches, this is 15 inches, and this is 12 inches. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, right, is find S. S is half the sum of all of our sides. So 4 plus 15 plus 12. I'm going to find half of 31. So S is 15.5. And we're going to use this in the formula for our area. So it's S times S minus one of the sides times S minus another side times S minus the final side. It doesn't really matter what order you enter this in, but I'm going to enter everything underneath into my calculator. So 15.5 times 15.5 minus 4 times 15.5 minus 15 times 15.5 minus 12. And I get the square root of 311.9375. So the square root of that gives me 17.66 inches squared. Whew, that covers this lesson. For the homework, you're going to skip numbers 7, 12, 14, 19, 22, and 28. Thank you.